Everybody, my name's Carla Smith. I'm Wellbeing Lead for NHS Arden and GEM Commissioning Support Unit. Today I'm joined by my colleague Dr. David Matthew, who's managing the chat box, and also joined by Neil Houchin from Eulogie. They'll have an opportunity to introduce themselves shortly. I've had 15 years experience in the NHS, and in all roles they've all been people focused. I love working with people, and I'm particularly passionate about wellbeing. Please, Neil. Thank you very much. So this is our model from the CSU, our model that we have put in place for our staff, quite happily shared nationally. You'll see that one element of your mental health or your well-being is financial well-being. And that's good because that's what today's session is about. What I will say is there's no better time to start understanding and educating, even getting a grip on your finances, your incomes and expenditures because of COVID-19. So with the recovery phases as well, Neil will talk to you a lot more about that. It's a car and staying in control of your finances. If you'd like to use the chat box just to introduce yourselves and where you are from, and maybe any concerns, queries, questions that are sort of burning right now for you in terms of finance, please do so. We'd love to see those. And while you're doing that, I'll hand over to David he can introduce himself. Off you go.
Thank you, Carla. As Carla said, I'm David Matthew. I'm Learning and Development Manager for Arden and GEM, CSU. Most of my work is in Bedfordshire, Luton, Milton Keynes, CCGs, with a roving role across the Midlands as well. I've been with Arden and GEM just coming up for my first year in the NHS for 18 months, with a background in the university sector.
Okay, thanks very much, David. Could we take the next slide, Neil? So before I hand you over to Neil, we've been working with Neil and Eulogie for a number of years now. They are the experts, and you can be assured that today you are in the hands of the experts. You'll see a little bit of feedback there that we've taken from previous sessions that we've run. We have a very quick turnaround time. Neil is very helpful. What I will say is that all of these slides today will be available at the end, and also the recording, and there will be opportunities to ask further questions and even opportunity for a one-to-one conversation with Neil or one of his team. We will talk you through that as we go through the webinar today. I think on that note, I'd like to hand you over to Neil, who will clearly introduce himself and start his expert presentation. Thanks, Neil.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Carla said, my name is Neil Houchin, and thank you, David. The word about today is financial awareness and education. That is the key thing and the message of today. The reason being is we really want to start educating you from ground upwards. Start in a position of where your well-being is, where financially you stand already, and typically kind of self-diagnose yourself where you are financially. Then when you've got that grasp, you can start making the right plans for yourself and your family, what lifestyle you want to lead, etc., etc. The slide I'm showing you here, I really just want to draw your attention to the Eulogie brand first of all. Eulogie, we've been doing, as Carla's alluded to already, we've been working with the NHS closely now for over 16 years, providing awareness and educational seminars to the NHS, to the private sector and other public sectors out there. I cannot make this point clearer. I am a chartered financial planner. I'm a regulated chartered financial planner by the Financial Conduct Authority, and I do provide advice. But today is awareness. Please do not walk away from here saying, this chap with the Gloucestershire accent is providing me with advice. I really explicitly got to make that one quite clear to yourselves. So it is awareness, it is education. And what we want to do for this journey about today is make it quite clear as I've said to you already, build bottom upwards and give you a good idea and some good grounding for you to make your own financial decisions moving forward with your loved ones as well. The caveat here just highlights this, but I do want to make yourself aware of the bottom bullet point here as well. In today's webinar, I will be using stereotypical scenarios. Apologies in advance for that, but it's simply there just to use illustrative purposes, just to paint pictures in people's minds and scenarios to try to get a message away to yourselves in the most painted method I can possibly do in a virtual environment that we're all living in at this present time. Herd mentality. Been working in the advice environment for many, many years. And there's one thing that is outstanding with the NHS. I'm afraid to say it is the herd mentality. I ask questions, and through these seminars up and down the country, and some of you listening today may have attended already a eulogy seminar where we used to actually see each other physically, be within 2 meters apart. But the one thing that does outstand with the NHS is the herd mentality. And when you speak to people about, oh, well, I did retire and return, Neil, what's your thoughts on that? And I took the large tax-free lump sum. Well, in fact, Neil, I just left the pension. And always I will come out the same response. Why did you do that? And who told you to do that? And usually, more times than not, it's actually because somebody within the NHS, i.e. Brian in radiography or Janet in catering, has said, that's what I've heard is the best thing to do. Please remove the herd mentality. I am listening today, I'm talking to yourselves. I understand there's circa 70, 80 people here on this webinar, which is a fantastic thing. But there could be 140, 160 of you because you've got your partners, you've got your spouses, you've got your adult children. And in most family backgrounds, it's usually as a team that you will retire together. You build your lifestyle together, you do the nice things together. You might be very close to your colleagues and your friends, but actually as individuals, you really do have to make your own financial decisions. And that's what we're going to start encompassing in today's. So there I am asking you to make your own decisions. Absolutely, do your own research and the tools I'm giving you. I think I'm going to give you a few tools today for you to start making the inroads to making these confident decisions you're going to start making for yourselves financially. But fake news has been around for many, many years, hundreds of years, in fact. And the reason being is really they're just trying to sell tabloids and now their Sky apps, for example. But be conscious of what you read. It's not all correct. And certainly what's going on right now with COVID-19, there's a lot of false data and of false mechanisms out there. Have you got it or you haven't? But there's a few people on this slide I really want to. One of them is Mr. Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. Love him or hate him. That's your own opinion. I will leave it up to the side, but we still got to listen to what he says. Now, that could be via dialogue and his daily conferences or via Twitter feeds that he does. But this chap here, he does have an impact on our daily lives. If he decides to have a trade war with China, like he currently beginning to have again with COVID, or what he did over the Christmas periods with manufacturing, that has an impact on our daily lives because our cost of goods will increase. The trade war he had with Iran, again, over the Christmas period, will have an increase on the fuel costs, which it did. So we've got to be conscious of this and have some idea of what that's meaning to ourselves, because that draws up the level of inflation. And that's the cost of living. And the cost of living is really important because there'll be people on this this webinar, who may have just come out of a pay freeze due to austerity measures 10 years ago. And realised actually life around you is increasing in cost, but your level of pay stays the same. The facts are, if you've got cash savings, the Bank of England base rate right now is 0.1%. Inflation in this country, everybody, is targeted at 2%. So therefore, already your cash savings are going to depreciate year on year and have done that for the last 10 years. The good news for you, though, is your state pension, your NHS pensions, when they come into play, they're inflationary linked. So you know your retirement lifestyle will be inflationary proofed. But is it lifestyle proofed? And that's what we're going to start touching on later on today. And as well as some other webinars that we're hosting, as Carl has indicated, regarding pensions directly and estate planning. So again, we will really get specific in those webinars. Global influences, there's been a hell of a lot. And this is only 2007. So we're stemming about 13 years. Look, the one in red is COVID-19. The issue of COVID-19 and for the markets at this present time is this just the unknown. No one really knows. We've had stock market corrections, we've had booms, we've had busts, we've had credit crunches, we've had wars, trade wars. We even had that old thing too in 2019 called Brexit. But the thing is, it's a world that we kind of anticipated could work out. The thing with COVID-19, everybody, we don't know. And that's why the news and understanding the right news and not listening to the fake news is really key. And yourselves, being NHS, you are literally on the front line with what's going on daily. Again, what this is trying to get across to you, there will always be something will actually probably impact the financial decision you're ever going to make moving forwards. So understanding your financial position is crucial. We've got 3 stages here. We've got stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 1 is basic wealth protection. But everybody on here, I would love you to be all in the golden box, and we call that the stage 2 environment, the wealth accumulation zone. And I'd really like that, because simply what that does and what that indicates is you've got more money going in than going out. And that's why we call it the golden box scenario. However, we know for a fact that that is not always the case. Again, that's stereotypical, everybody. And if I use me and my wife for an example, we have just come out of stage 1. She's now gone back to work part-time because we've got two young children, and we have just entered stage 2. And it's taken us over 40 years to get out of stage 1 into stage 2. But what do we do with our money now? Do we start saving more? Do we pay off more of our mortgage? Do we start spending more at Starbucks? Because the critical thing here, everybody, is one day we will all be stage 3. And stage 3 is wealth distribution. And that word is pension. You are going to be a pensioner one day. We hope you're going to be a pensioner one day. And if you want a really good retirement lifestyle, or you want to begin to have a good lifestyle beforehand or retire earlier, etc., it is really about stage 2. And get to grasp, if I've got more money going in than going out, what am I doing with it? Again, let me make it very, very clear. Stage 2, go in and out of stage 2 to stage 1 very quickly. We know this is going to begin to happen, if not already beginning to happen, because of furlough and what's going on with COVID-19. And that's what we're going to touch on later on. So again, stereotypically, but this is a very situation in our household right now. My wife comes from a manufacturing background and has been furloughed. Therefore, we are now living off an 80% salary of herself. And I'm sure there are many people on this webinar now who are beginning to experience partners, spouses, adult children who are beginning to fall into that position. So we'll touch a bit more about COVID and furlough later on. Let's then get to an idea and a grip about our own individual financial position. We've broken things down into 5 environments. You've got the battlers, which literally you are living in your overdraft facility monthly. You are pretty much may have a mortgage, you still have rent, you're still getting by, but you are literally battling away every month and you are really cutting back. Survivors, you're just finding that you're not in your overdraft all the time. You may have a couple of pounds in credit each month, but again, you really have to count the pennies. And counting the pennies is not an issue. Counting the pennies, even when you go, let's skip to the thriving, where let's just say you've got a lot of money. Counting the pennies is key. It is crucial, because what it does, it brings your head out of the sand and start hitting things head on. Now, if you are in the battling, surviving periods of your own selves, we'll be a touch on a few things on that later on. But if you're a developer or a planner where you're beginning to see you've got more money going in than going out, what are you being cute about? What are you being Gucci about? What are the right things you're doing now? Are you spending more because you're earning more? Or are you beginning to start spending more, but also doing a good critical thing about saving things and putting things in the right place, i.e. mortgages, paying off any loans or debt, or paying more into pensions, etc. Taking control. We know debt is an issue in this country, but let's now reword that. Is debt really an issue? Look, 1 in 6 of us, 1 in 6 adults are in debt because we have mortgages, we have credit cards, we've got loans, we've got personal finance, car lease. You know, the list is endless. So actually, debt, owing money to someone else, is not a bad thing. What the crucial thing is, though, is the debt management of yourself. Are you dealing with it correctly? If you are, brilliant, no problem. But if debt's managing you, that's where you've now have to take in control. Hence why we've just done the last 2 slides. Take a grip, take the bull by the horns, and start working out, look, let's look at our bank balance every day. Let's look where we can start taking corners and cutting corners. And I'll give you some indications shortly on what that looks like. But again, with experience, debt management doesn't happen overnight. It happens, it's a marathon. It's definitely not a sprint. And all the scenarios we've come with debt is it can be treated, it can be dealt with, but it's a two-way relationship, and it's more about yourself making you're doing the right things and not keeping up with the Joneses, certainly so. The change curve, behavioural finance, redeployment, new work, new family members, children, etc. This change curve is so universal. I'm a true believer of it, because I feel as humans, some of us may go for this in a morning with our teenage children. Some of us may see this with our current work. We know the NHS have gone through a massive change. You've all come out of your redeployed work. You're doing some frontline work, which has put people right out of their comfort zone. But we also see this curve in finance. If people are being furloughed, people have lost their jobs, there's a massive change in their daily environment, their working environment, their social environment. We're going through the social environment change as we speak right now as well with lockdown, and that may continue even further. But what this is really trying to indicate here is we are human. There is no doubt about it. I think what now with the crisis going on now, we are typically human. And this is really just to give you some sort of idea that emotions, as being humans, is absolutely normal, absolutely fine to deal with. And what the last slide was also trying to indicate is if you need assistance, if you need help with debt management, anxiety, depression, talk to people. There are plenty of outlets out there that are happy to help you. But please, even if you need to use these, this is grand, because this can be redeployed in any way regarding what we do. It's more the acceptance of it. As you can see right in the front of us, you've got the word of acceptance. As soon as we accept it and grasp the change, the quicker we can get out of this. And that can mean for many different environments. We talked about debt management earlier on. We talked about those battlers. We talked about the survivors. As a chartered financial planner, there is one thing that really props up all financial planning, and this goes to yourself, is what's called the cornerstone of financial planning in our world. This is, look, if I've got more money going out than going in, I really got to do things. And to the right, we've broken things down, very high level, core expenditure and discretionary spend. Now, core expenditure, your utility bills, your food, etc. There's very little wiggle room, very little wiggle room. But discretionary spend, you will have wiggle room with, to the point where you just have to cancel Sky, or you stop having those certain magazines and newspapers. And we could call it, that is the nice things of life, and that gives us motivation. But actually moving forwards, and what there might be coming forwards towards us economically as a country, you may want to start looking at this. And I would certainly say the first thing myself, my colleagues would do is do an income and expenditure exercise. I've given David and Carla a link to and a Word document of the income and expenditure document we use, which will absolutely support you. If you want to do some DIY, and I'd certainly call this one of the first things you should do on a to-do list is, and if you've got a pen and paper there, everybody, please do this. The first one of to-do lists is do your own income and expenditure. And actually understand what is your spend, because that is crucial, and that will prop up, not now, but that would also prop up what's going to happen tomorrow, next year, and certainly the retirement lifestyle and spend that you may want at a later time. So, government benefits. We've touched on furlough. We've touched on the job retention schemes very, very briefly. This is a moving feast. You know, every day we're getting a debrief from government, and they're telling us there's this and there's that. And to be honest, from a fiscal perspective, there's not been much change. But from grants, from loans, and the bounce back loan that recently has been released at the earlier, 4th of May, that comes into play, has been done. I was on when I was driving yesterday evening. It made it quite clear on the news that there are a lot of people that haven't claimed yet. They know that from their own management information systems at HMRC. So again, if this is impacting any of your loved ones, any spouses, friends, family, adult children, please get them to start being motivated to make these grants for themselves. What I will make clear from work with HMRC over the years is HMRC will not hold your hand through this process. We know that this is something that you're definitely going to have to do yourself. We have provided some government links there to make your life a bit easier, but this is more about your search and rescue scenarios of your own finances. There is the thing about, is furlough going to be extended towards the end of June? I think we're waiting for tomorrow's dialogue to come out from Boris Johnson to give us an idea how long this lockdown will mean and how that would impact jobs moving forwards. But let me make it quite clear, when you're furloughed, that is still typically not redundancy, because that's key. That is key. Unfortunately, everybody, and I am definitely a person with my pint is always half full, we are, from an economy perspective, and an economist is what we deal with daily, is we are expecting potentially there is going to be a recession, and therefore recession, we do expect there will be redundancies. Now, what I will make clear here is unemployment, job seekers allowance, that signing on, the word signing on, that might be conceived as a dirty word. Please sign on. The reasons why is, number one, you will get some form of benefit. Now, it might not be a drop in the ocean compared to what you've earned historically, but secondly to that, it is free money, and it's money that you have typically paid in via your national insurance contributions over the years. Also, to add on that, if you are coming up to state pension age, or you're several years away from state pension age, your job seekers is actually a national insurance contribution towards your state pension. So I cannot make it clear, if you're number one, it's money. You have worked for that money. You've paid national insurance in towards that. So therefore that money will be kicked back to you. But also, if you are coming up to state pension age, it can make a difference about the national insurance contributions towards your state pension. And I'll be talking about state pensions briefly in a minute. Bereavement support. The reason I'm highlighting that is there's two things really. Number one, obviously the world we're going in for, there's been some unfortunate untimely deaths across that's affected all demographics of society. There is a bereavement support payment that's there, and it also can help towards child benefit. The second reason is actually when people do pass away below the state pension age, this is a really underclaimed benefit. And what this is about is just trying to make it quite clear that there are a lot of UK benefits out there. There's a lot of government benefits out there which are unclaimed. And when I mean billions, they're unclaimed every year. As I've said to you when we talked about furlough a couple of minutes ago, no one will hold your hand through this type of claim of government benefits or furlough. This is something that you will have to investigate yourself. And certainly this time where charities are really, really under-resourced and oversubscribed, it's a double-edged sword effect. Please start using these links. I've got a link here of Age UK. I'm not endorsing Age UK. They do a fab job, by the way. But as a professional, I have used their website because they have a great money calculator there and a benefit calculator, which can assist you and your current circumstances as well. So please make the motions, take control and start doing these yourself. And that will help you financially and help your family financially. Mental health and financial well-being. There is a certain webinar that we're looking to release later on regarding this, but again, from experience, there is a massive integral cohesion of mental health and the relationship with money. And if you look at all the stats out there, financial well-being and mental health is more than people's own personal relationships, children, work. It's the money. Money is systemic causing this. I wouldn't say money causes all happiness, but it certainly does have an ember burning there of causing disharmony. There is a stat bottom left-hand corner. Again, I live in the southwest, and we know there's a local charity that's had a 365% increase in inquiries. What I've done is I've also highlighted in yellow. Please doing it. These are quick wins. These are takeaways. These are things you can do today, tomorrow with your family. But absolutely immediately look at your own income and versus your expenditure. That's crucial. Get to know yourself. Begin to self-diagnose. Then break it down to the core and discretionary spend. We've done that for you with the Word document that we've provided. But then once you've done that, And what may come towards us regarding further furlough, redundancies, economics, people are dubbing it austerity too, potentially. You've got to start thinking, where is there wiggle room? Now, do we start making wiggle room now? Do we start actually cancelling certain subscriptions in readiness? Or do we just put that on the back burner, ready just in case, and put certain parachute placements in? People do live alone right now with less interaction. We have seen a massive increase on people buying online, not because that's the only reason they can do it, but actually because people are bored and they're buying things we can see they don't really need, and therefore that can spiral debt in further control. So these are just little quick wins. We want you to have a good well-being, and what Carla and her team are doing behind the scenes is absolutely fantastic. And that's why we're being involved with the monetary side of things, the financial, the well-being, the mental health part of things. Is just try to say, look, we are human. As I said about the change curve, this has impacted, I'm sure, many, many people, myself included. And actually, it's one of those things, just deal with it. We've got to, if we need support, ask for support, help yourself, get other people to assist you. Sometimes it is just literally talking to a fellow friend and see what they do. So, pensions and retirement. We break things down into 3 different types of pension. And there are 3 different types of pension out there, everybody. You've got the state pension, the money purchase or defined contribution pension, or defined benefit or final salary pension. All of you, it's going to be a state pension. We hope you're going to have access to the state pension. And the second thing I would ask you to do on your to-do list is request a state pension forecast. Now, this would be something you go through your browser, that'll be Bing or Google, whatever takes your fancy, and you will highly likely will have to open up what's called a government gateway to do that. There's a number of key reasons why we ask you to do this. The NHS was impacted by contracted out pensions, which is another conversation for another webinar about pensions specifically. But crucially, you do now need 35 years of national insurance contributions. And this rule changed in 2016. So only in the last 4 years, you now needed 30 years to 35 years. Your state pension forecast will tell you how many national insurance contribution years you've done to date and how many you will need to do to accrue those 35 years. But the state pension is a good gig. Right now, for this current tax year, it's paying just over £9,000 a year. That's if you've got the full 35 years. It is inflationary linked. Now, right at the beginning, we talked about inflation. This is triple locked inflation. It will keep up the highest pace of inflation. So it's definitely something you need to know about. It's definitely something you need to investigate. And certainly these people in the webinar, obviously I don't know the demographics that are involved today, but if you are certainly 45, 50 years of age plus, this is definitely one of the first things you should certainly be looking at. Secondly, we talk about defined contribution pensions. These are pensions that really would affect people that probably worked in the private sector. If you've historically worked in the private sector or have partners or spouses who work in the private sector, I would certainly ask them to identify any private pensions they have had with old employers or AVCs or stakeholders or personal pensions. Identify if you've got those. If you've got those, I would certainly suggest you ask someone, a professional that is, to look at those for you, because the world of pensions in this world has changed massively. Again, we will touch on that in a different webinar. But if you've got the AVCs who come from the private sector, partners, spouses tend to be more from the private sector background, certainly identify it, knock the dust off any paperwork you've had and get that looked at, because these have now in recent years been kind of get out of jail cards, silver bullets. Try this, help people sustain, maintain, or even help retire sooner rather than later. But also the bottom ground up is identifying what financial position they are now, and that's needed. And when I say this about the state pensions, and let's just go back to state pensions, I'll just skip back there. This is just not something that the NHS webinar attendees should be doing. Everybody should be doing that. So again, your partners, your spouses, please ask them to do this, because as I said right at the beginning, this is a team effort. As a team, we really want to make sure that you've got the full ability of all your pensions out there. NHS pensions, we'll touch on this. We've got the 95, the 08, the 15 schemes, and Nest. And Nest is more about people that have retired and returned. And we go into this with the pension webinar we do in a couple of weeks' time. But like your state pension, get a forecast. Like your income and expenditure, do an income and expenditure document. This I'd like you to do for a takeaway and do yourself. And this is your total reward statement. The advantage of getting your total reward statement is this is your pension. This is your bread and butter in retirement. This is the backbone of your retirement planning, as long as your state pension is there as well. And what it will tell on there is actually what your normal retirement age is, what pensions you are in, because not everybody's now going to be just the 95. People will be drifted into the 2015 scheme down to certain dates and down to the date you were born. Simple as that. Also, we know NHS pensions, things go wrong, things go missing, years go missing, etc. So again, you're self-identifying and making sure the dust has landed and you've got the right, they've got the right pension for you. Have you got special class status, for example, mental health officer status on your total reward statement? You need this in advance. And what I always make it clear, you will always want to have an argument about pensions this side of retirement versus that side. Right? You need to know this in advance. It's quite easy, I understand, to get it via ESR systems, but again, I know that obviously software does fail. So what I've also done, and I'll show you later on, is the NHS pension side, so you can contact them directly for yourself. Within that total reward statement, for some of the special classes and mental health officers, and special classes will be nurses, physiotherapists, midwives, occupational nurses, health visitors, and mental health officer status, you will need to be in the post by the 6th of March 1995. Again, your total reward statement will confirm that, and again, you can just backdate that and check that if it's wrong. The reason why I'm bringing this up regarding the 95 section, in recent weeks, we know for a fact that there's many people that might be on this webinar or people looking into it that have been affected or would have been affected by what's called the abatement rule. The abatement rule, in essence, means you couldn't go back to work for the NHS and earn more money than what you did do before the age 60. We know that with government, and this is one of the sad first things I looked into, because I look into pensions daily, was the concern for yourselves and about this abatement rule, this quirk in rules. And actually the good news for you is actually the government have put this straight into place. And actually they've suspended, and let me make that quite clear, they have suspended the abatement rule. They haven't eradicated it, they've suspended it. So again, please keep on top of that, because this may affect people on this webinar where they've gone back to work. That's good, they're bringing in an income, it's more than double what they earned beforehand because of overtime, etc. But make sure you just keep an audit of that, just in case. But right now it's been suspended and we don't know when that suspension will end, so I can't unfortunately give you an answer on that. And this is NHS pensions. We work with NHS pensions pretty much. We speak to them daily, myself, the team, we speak to them daily. They're a great bunch. These people here can go straight into the DNA of your NHS pension. By all means, please contact them. As we all know, the NHS are really under stress positions right now. They're a good bunch though, so give them some time. But also a quick win for yourself is get that total reward statement for yourselves. A lot of people within the NHS will rely on something called death in service. Death in service is just simply if you die in service, you get 2 times your salary. Unfortunately, what we do need to make clear is if you've got X amount of liability, like mortgages, debts, family, children, which all cost money, as we well know, have you got enough protection in place to protect that liability? Unfortunately, we come across cases very regularly where people have got all this liability, they've got these nice things, but they haven't got the protection to protect it in case of death, or they lose their jobs, or they're unwell and they can't go back to work, and that's what's called income protection. So again, I would certainly say go away. I'm part of this to-do list, and I do feel I'm giving you a lot more work, but this is not a bad thing. This is all about yourselves, is identify, if you have a mortgage, do you have the right protection in place? I have income protection. Do I have income protection? If I'm off work for more than 12 months, what's going to happen on the 13th month? So it's these little things we've got to start thinking. Service, as I've alluded to already, is part of what's called the DB2 form, Death Benefit 2. And certainly what they will do, the NHS, they will automatically provide it to your married spouse or civil partner. Look, tongue-in-cheek remark, but this does come across quite often. Unfortunately, people no longer are with their spouses, but are still married, and there's been a few horror stories there. I come from a legal and financial background, big fan of signatures and dates. If you want to make sure X person gets this or X persons get it, please illustrate it via the DB2 form. And that is death in service, and you get 2 times your salary. What I will now allude to is the 2 bottom bullet points, and this is literally came out of the press. Well, this is government press in recent weeks. Number 1 is people who've opted out of their pension. You do not usually have your death in service, and that is still the case, everyone. However, what they will do is they will do a fractionally actuarial calculation for you of what you're entitled to. What that figure is definitely not for this conversation, something you speak to NHS pensions about directly. However, we also do know now, unfortunately, if you've got many colleagues out there, but if people pass away due to, on front line or social care staff pass away due to COVID symptoms, their family will be given a further 60,000 on top to their family members. Fraud and scams. Look, I'm going to touch on this because when we are tired, when we're doing double hours, when we're in an environment that we're not used to right now, we are becoming more anxious. And when we're more anxious, we become more vulnerable. And when we may become more vulnerable, sometimes we do not make the right decisions, or decisions that we will never usually have made. And we are seeing that right now with the NHS personnel. Because of everything that's being asked of you, people are trying now to take advantage of that. And they're fraudsters, they're scammers. We know there's, again, EE, I'm not endorsing EE, but I know they're heavily advertising about the free airtime, free data they give you. That's legit, I get that. But please be careful of these scams, these phishing scams, where they're just giving you clickbait, loads of emails. If it's generally too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Do not sign it, do not touch the links, just delete and hang up. But this is also very evident to the older generation as well. Let's say, stereotypically, they're always in a vulnerable class. Anybody that's 80 plus, for example, let's now say our majority of people now are in a vulnerable position, certainly the elderly. These could be your parents, these could be your grandparents. And again, what I would suggest you do is start just understanding what's going on there. Are they being victim to fraud? It may not just be victim to fraud. What we do come across in all these scenarios, after they've started investigating what their family members, their older family members are paying out on, sometimes they're paying out on 2 building and contents insurance, or they're paying for AA and RAC breakdown, but they no longer drive. So these are little quick wins. These are just trying to support your family, your close ones for fraud, and also just trying to save yourself some money where you don't need to spend that money. Tax saving investing. I'll briefly touch on this, but we can all earn £12,500 a year without no income tax. That's what's called the personal threshold, the personal income threshold. Pension income, everybody, is classed as working income, so it is taxed accordingly as income tax. We do expect a lot of basic rate taxpayers within the NHS to actually go into the higher rate tax threshold, which is the £50,000 to £100,000. The reason why we're saying that is because a lot of you have done overtime, and so we can imagine that might have a ripple effect throughout the tax year. Let me make it clear, you only pay 40% tax above the 50,000 figure. You do not start paying 40% tax from the 12,500 figure, right? Just to give you that kind of reassurance there. Marriage allowance, the bottom left-hand corner. People, unfortunately, will be furloughed. People will be beginning to be made redundant. We're hearing a lot of redundancies in aerospace at this present time and manufacturing. So what I would say to yourselves here, if you've got a non-taxpayer in your family, that person can transfer £1,250 of their personal allowance into the basic rate taxpayer's spouse. You can, it's just a quick little win there as well. Very easy to do. If that person's a higher rate taxpayer, though, they're not allowed to claim this. So as a non-taxpayer to basic rate taxpayer. Quick win, do it via the HMRC websites. All of this go directly to HMRC websites. Do not use any of these sponsored links. You'll be caught out. Very easy to do. Very easy to do. We've done it. We've done it. It's very easy to do. ISAs, individual savings accounts, they've been around since the turn of the century, year 2000. Look, The maximum you can pay into an ISA right now is £20,000. Cash ISAs, they're poor. They are cash accounts. Interest rates are very poor, have been for over a decade. This is more focused on investment ISAs. And investment ISAs, money will go up and down in value. Let me make it very clear. Investment ISAs will go up and down in value. But that's investment. That's planning for retirement. That's planning for those big things in life, those house deposits, future spend, home improvements, etc. The advantages of investment ISAs, though, is the income you take from an investment is tax-free. The money you take from pensions is taxable. So you've got a kind of hand-in-glove relationship going on here. Also, money from an investment ISA is also capital gains tax-free. And again, we will touch on this more bizarrely, actually, within the pension webinar. Finally, we'll kind of wrap it up with estate and legacy planning. Unfortunately, obviously, what's going on in the crisis, it's made wills and lasting power of attorneys, LPAs, lasting power of attorney applications, the forefront of people's mind. Actually, what happens, and actually it did happen, and we haven't got control. I'm not leaning on advice at all today. I've made that very clear. My opening words were, this is not advice. But wills, please look in doing a will if you haven't done a will. We do have an estate planning webinar coming up in a couple of weeks' time by Julie and Rebecca, huge professionals in this environment, and they will give you absolutely better grounding information than what I will do in this brief financial knowledge webinar. But lasting power of attorneys as well. This is where people just generally cannot take control of their finances due to being into a coma, for example, due to losing their mind. And we see that with dementia and Alzheimer's. Again, these are things, these are quick wins for your estate, your legacy. And as I said, there is a webinar focused on estate planning, which I'd recommend absolutely look into further. So I've been talking pretty much now for close on to 40 minutes, and I'm conscious of time, and there's going to maybe potentially some questions. But look, we've talked about a lot today. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been presenting for many, many years as well. And you're definitely not going to come out of here with all the answers. But what I really want you to walk away with today is, number one, do an income and expenditure form. Do one yourself. Understand what you are spending your money on, because it does disappear somewhere. I know so personally. Number two, get yourself a state pension forecast. Very easy done. 3, get your total rewards statement. And number 4, if you've got any liability, debts, mortgages, etc., do you have the right protection in place to cover that, just in case unfortunate things happen? Aftercare. As I said, we've been working with NHS for many, many years, and some of you may have already been part of one of our seminars. We pride ourselves, we do provide an aftercare service. We have done always, and it's free of charge. And what we've done there is made it very clear, if you wish to do so and speak to ourselves about anything specific on today's webinar, we'll hopefully answer those questions or lead you in the right direction. All we require is just your name. Just give us a brief indication so we know what specialist to point you in the right direction with. But also, can you put code C1? C1 is simply there just for monitoring purposes. So myself, David and Carla know exactly where and what's been going on from these webinars. From an advice process, as I've said, this is not advice. But if you are ever going to seek advice, let me make it very, very clear. Make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure that person or the company has chartered status, and certainly they're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Some of you will probably already have a financial planner, a financial advisor. Great, have a good relationship with them. Some people will be looking for that assistance, maybe not now, but in the future. If you do, just do your due diligence. If anybody can come to you today and do it today for you, it's usually fraud and a scam. So just please, just walk away, don't get caught out. The estate plan, I'm not going to touch on this because the estate planners will talk in a bit more detail, but these are the regulators. You've got Steps Society of Trust and estate practitioners. Again, if you're going to look to get a will or a lasting power of attorney, etc., don't do it somewhere with a car boot sale or outside Tesco's or Asda, their pop-up stands. They're not going to be there tomorrow. If you need that further assistance, that aftercare process, that aftercare help and assistance, they're not going to be there. Make sure you go with a right professional. Do your due diligence. If you do want to speak to ourselves, I just make it quite clear, we fully comply with the UK General Data Protection Regulation Act. And if you wish to after that, we're happy to forward you on further newsletters as well, which again, is all free of charge. It's complete generic information. So thank you for your time. Obviously, I know I talk pretty quick to try and get as much as I possibly can do in that short period of time, but there are other focused webinars moving forward, which will definitely give you a bit more meat on the bone about those specialist environments. And again, as I said, here's our email address. So if you wish to talk to ourselves in a more individual perspective, we're more than happy to do so. Over to you, Carla.
Thank you so much, Neil. I've taken my 3 tasks and we'll be back with you shortly. David, is there anything that you'd like to...
A couple of questions, Neil, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
And one that's not in the chat box but came to me direct. I'll start with that one, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
What if I am frightened to face my finances?
Yeah, do you know what? That's a really very, very good question.
That's putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, but to be absolutely honest with yourself and to all the attendees and certainly the person, first thing is they've just asked that question. That question alone is the groundbreaker. That's the key thing. You know you're frightened. That's spot on. So well done for that. Secondly, it's then now you're frightened of it. I would suggest just by you using those words, you probably will now need assistance for somebody to hold your hand through that process. Now, there's certain charities out there, not to give you charitable help, that's not the case, but certainly hold your hand and put you in the right direction. But what I would definitely say, and I know just do this, as I've said, number one, that's the groundbreaker. They've admitted they're frightened of it. I would say, secondly, do an income and expenditure. Just literally lock on online banking. Again, having that relationship just with your own bank balance and understanding what's going out. I would say that's your next focus. It really is to have that relationship, because a lot of people don't log into their banks and building society accounts because they're scared. Generally, they're scared to understand what's going on behind the scenes. But if you can see that, then that's the next stage. And I would certainly ask friends, family, support from those certain professional bodies that are certainly happy to help you. But again, this is where I would say I stand up for Martin Lewis. I've read a lot of his documentaries and vocabulary, as well as other professionals on there. There is not one case of this scenario you've just mentioned, and this goes to everybody, where it can't be overcome. It can all be overcome, but it just won't. I can promise you now that it just doesn't happen within 24 hours. It's a marathon. It's a marathon. It's a relationship with your bank balance, basically. Does that, I'm sorry, I don't know obviously that helps or not, but
thank you. Something you touched on a little earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. Would now be a good or bad time to sign up to a salary sacrifice scheme?
Okay. We have to come back a bit, because we've got to understand exactly what position I'm in financially. So salary sacrifice, the pros and cons. Salary sacrifice, you are sacrificing your salary. So remember, we do have a knock-on effect then with our pension. Sacrifice your effect. If you are looking to borrow money in the future for a mortgage, you are sacrificing your salary. So theoretically, you're having less there. And the salary sacrifice really does affect 1995 schemers, because it's best year of your final 3 years. Remember, 2008 pensioners, it's the best year of your final 10 years. So again, that will have an impact. And 2015 schemes a career average. So again, if you're doing certain salary sacrifice, that can have a negative effect through the course of that pension for the entire time. But coming out, this is me now talking now, I'm not advising here. I have personally used salary sacrifice myself for childcare vouchers, for certain things to support the family. So it's one of those balancing acts. Actually, that's probably the best thing for now. And I've sacrificed, but then actually, as soon as I would come out and the kids are a certain age, actually I'll go back in and remove the salary sacrifice. So, as I think, just me answering that, I can't give you some high level figures, but as you can already see, people's individual circumstances will all differ, because what pension schemes are you in? How much are you looking to sacrifice? For what purpose? Do you need to do it? All these are aims and objectives of that person, and everybody on this, obviously in this webinar, would be slightly different. So, but answer the question head on, is now or not a good time? I wouldn't say now or or now is not a good time or not. I don't think actually that really matters. It's actually down to the personal circumstances and where they want to go with that latter time. That's where I'd come to first.
Thank you, Neil. Is it worth topping up a state pension if you've worked a number of years part-time?
Oh, okay, good common question. So again, we will touch on this on the pension webinar. And please take this the right way. The state pension, as I made out, is it's a fab thing. It's good. But actually, the critical thing, and none of us can answer this right now, is how long do we plan to live? Because what I mean by that is, if I use my father, for example, my father is of ill health. If he ploughed in a lot of money into his state pension to make up those added years, due to all his illnesses, he probably doesn't have a longevity of life to actually get that money back. If a mother, for example, though, she's like a spring hare, she you know, technically you would imagine she would live a longer time. If we just base things on normal longevity of life via the Office of National Statistics, then actually, yes, it would make sense. It makes sense only if you can afford it, by the way. If you can't afford it, you kind of then go into this debtor spiral. But if you can afford to add more money into your state pension and you've got good genetics in there, longevity of life, you're in good health, etc., then actually it's all on the cards that, yeah, it's a good thing to do. Definitely.
Thank you, Neil. What advice would you give? I know you're not here to give advice. You've made that very clear. You've made it very clear to the audience. But the question is, what advice would you give to someone who is torn between clearing debts and saving for the future and following the YOLO mantra, especially during the current pandemic when people are experiencing high levels of loss?
I would definitely need to, apologies for this, familiarise myself with the mantra. There, I'm not familiar with it, so I can't really answer that way. Apologies. I should know. I should know. But go back to the first statement. Business as usual in normal environments, normal times. I would say look to clear debt. But then you've got this thing called the pincer movement. Because what we find, and this is kind of answering hopefully some of the question, we find lots of people plough loads of money to pay off their mortgage. Brilliant, well done. You're now mortgage debt free. Congratulations. But then they want to go on holiday or get themselves a caravan. And do you know what they do? They've got no savings. So they go. So you're kind of now going back to square one to a certain extent. I am a bit of a fan of a pincer movement, depending on the demographic of the person as well. If you've got, say, typically a 30-year-old person, got a bit of debt, credit cards, uni debt, etc., but actually is beginning to settle down, buy a house in the future, get a deposit, family, then actually you will probably want to start saving a bit as well. And the reason why I'd say that pincer movement I'm more of a fan of is that savings can be a get out of jail. You can use that in case of furlough, in case of redundancies, of recessions, boiler breakdowns, car breakdowns. You've just got to have a bit of a backup plan so you don't have to use the loan sharks, the big credit cards, etc. So having some sort of emergency pot is always actually a wise idea. That emergency pot of money will differ again from person to person. But if you can chip away of paying off that debt, and if it's in control and remains in control, and you're making the most of 0% credit cards and the cheapest loan rates out there, for example, then also that just demonstrates that you've got your head on your shoulders, you're doing the right things, you're doing the right small things. That will never happen overnight. As I said earlier on, you never pay that debt off overnight. But if you can have that kind of balancing act, that's not a bad thing. And we're all doing that right now, by the way. We're all doing that now, because if we're all paying into our pension because we're doing that with the 95, 08, 15 and Nest, the majority of us in here will still have a credit card of debt and a mortgage. So we all typically are saving and paying off debt at the same time. It's just what way and how we label that debt. Apologies by not knowing that mantra.
It was explained off in a subsequent comment. YOLO stands for you only live once.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
I must admit, when I read the question, I thought YOLO mantra was something in the financial world. And
I was really worried that I didn't know the financial world lingo. I don't know anything. You only live once. I think actually, that's key. Yes, you're right. You only live once, and with the current climate, I I think what's going on current climate, people will review how they live their lifestyle. But what I will definitely say is people still, regardless how we do more cycling, riding bike, walking, spending more time with loved ones, less time on the road. Do you know what? Your gas, electricity bill will still come through the post, your council tax, your mortgage statement. So, and you will hopefully, touch wood, God willing, have a normal, standard, good lifestyle with family, etc. So I would always prepare, you plan for tomorrow. Look for living for today as well, but have the right parachute world in place as well for this.
We're just running close to finishing. Should we take one more question, David?
Yeah, absolutely. The last question is 2 questions, but they're kind of very linked and only require a kind of yes/no answer. So if I may put the last 2 as the final question. Does your state pension increase if you've worked more than 35 years full-time? And once you've reached 35 years in contributions, does your national insurance reduce? They're thematically linked. So
yeah, no. Okay, let's start off the second point because that helps. There's going to be many on this webinar. I apologise already in advance. You're going to do your state pension forecast. It says that you've already done 35 years, but you're still paying national insurance. And that is the fact. You only stop paying national insurance when you attain your state pension age. It doesn't reduce. You just carry on paying. Now, where's that money go to? Look, it goes actually back into things like the NHS, MOD, infrastructure, etc. So there are people, if you're 20 years of age today, you start working today, you retire at 68, you've worked 48 years. You only need 35 years for national insurance contributions. So you've overpaid. You don't get a bigger state pension out of it. It is what it is. You've just overpaid, but that is going back into the system. National insurance is a pay-as-you-go process. So right now, the national insurance that we're all paying into right now is actually paying the state pensioners of today. Obviously, the theme of NHS, MOD, etc., and public sectors out there and defence. But yeah, I hope that's answered the question. But sorry, and you can no longer opt out, by the way, of national insurance. You can no longer do that. If you retire, let me just clarify one more thing as well. Sorry to enter that. If you, for example, if you take your NHS pension, you only pay income tax on that. You do not pay national insurance on pension income. You only pay income tax. Right? It's only working income that you pay national insurance if you're below the state pension age. Does that help? Sorry, you're on.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you very much, Neil. I think that answers all the questions. Thank you, colleagues, for your contributions.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and we'll for our first of 6 webinars. So please do contact us at the email in the chat box if you would like to know more about future webinars. The email address is also on the screen in front of you. And of course, Neil and the organisation Eulogie have kindly offered you one-to-one conversations. If this is something that you feel you would like, then please do email info@eulogie.co.uk, but please quote C1, just so we know where your query stemmed from. We hope that it's been really useful for you today. I will just finish by saying stay safe. And thank you for joining us for Wednesday Wellbeing Lunch. See you next week.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.